The subterranean environment removes the biological advantages human beings possess on the surface. Underground, there is no sunlight to regulate circadian rhythms, and no open air to dissipate carbon dioxide. This three-dimensional wireframe of a cave system reveals a hostile physics engine. It operates on three absolute variables: zero lux lighting, immense thermal mass, and constrained rock geometry. Subterranean fatalities follow a predictable chain of physical reactions, a deterministic cascade triggered by specific breaches in protocol. Analyzing these events requires examining systems failure across three specific vectors: environmental, thermodynamic, and biomechanical. Surviving these environments depends on maintaining mathematical redundancy and proactive physiological risk mitigation. Environmental failure begins with the total loss of sensory input. Technical dry caving mandates the rule of three, requiring every explorer to carry three independent light sources at all times. Violating this rule leads to rapid psychological and spatial collapse. During a 5-day entrapment in New Trout Cave, a family lost all light sources, causing their spatial mapping to degrade until they were unable to distinguish a true path from the maze of false passages. Human spatial orientation relies on the brain projecting geometric sightlines into the surrounding space. When light fails in absolute euro-lux, those sightlines vanish, leaving the node entirely isolated. This sensory failure is magnified underwater. At the Dudu cave system, the pristine clarity of the water at the entrance suggests a high degree of safety. However, when recreational divers deviated from the main guideline to explore a side passage, their movements disturbed the environment and triggered a silt-out. This fluid dynamic simulation shows how fine floor particulate becomes suspended when agitated, obliterating visual input. Cave diving protocols utilize continuous guidelines for connection. Without that line, the diver's link to the entrance was permanently severed. Without visual input or a physical tether, navigation in a closed, multi-directional system degrades towards zero. In these conditions, finding an exit becomes a matter of diminishing probability. The second factor is thermodynamic extraction. Explorers often underestimate the danger of ambient cave temperatures, such as the 72-degree air in Florida's Boy Scout Cave. Air temperature is secondary to the physical mechanism of conductive heat loss. Water and damp limestone act as highly efficient thermal conductors. This thermodynamic model demonstrates conductive heat loss. Direct contact with wet limestone extracts body heat exponentially faster than air. With infinite thermal mass, this transfer continues until the immobile explorer's core temperature reaches a critical state. During the Weatherly Well incident, an explorer became trapped in a 9-inch slot. The wet rock soaked his clothing, removing the convective insulation layer that normally maintains body warmth. His core temperature plummeted, leading to slurred speech, muscular failure, and a loss of consciousness. The human body cannot metabolically outpace the thermal mass of the Earth. Without proper insulation and the ability to move, time is the ultimate enemy. The third vector is biomechanical entrapment. In 1990, a 13-year-old explorer in Killiansburg Cave attempted to pass through a narrow L-shaped bend. This 3D biomechanical animation shows the risk of narrow squeezes. To navigate the bend, the explorer hyperextended his knees. Reversing this movement becomes impossible. The joints mechanically lock against the sharp rock angles, preventing backward motion. These biomechanical constraints impose extreme logistical limitations on search and rescue operations. Narrow corridors prohibit the deployment of advanced extrication gear. Heavy-duty pulleys and pneumatic chisels cannot be transported into spaces barely wide enough for a single human body. Rescuers are forced to use localized physical strength and minimal hand tools, which drastically slows the extraction. Biomechanical entrapment multiplies rescue time, turning a mechanical problem into a fatal thermodynamic crisis as the patient sits motionless against cold limestone. Vertical caving relies on precision engineering, such as the standard ascender. When these technical systems are ignored, the consequences are immediate. At Banshee Hole, a caver used improvised webbing instead of a proper load-bearing seat harness. When he became stuck, his body was placed in a lethal state of suspension trauma. In this anatomical diagram of compression syndrome, pinch points from an improvised harness restrict blood flow to lower extremities, causing an accumulation of toxic lactic acid. Releasing the pressure paradoxically floods the cardiovascular system, triggering immediate cardiac arrest. Managing this condition requires medical interventions, like intravenous saline, administered before the mechanical pressure is released. Relying on improvised gear for vertical access results in mechanical failure while simultaneously weaponizing the body's own biochemistry against its vital organs. Subterranean exploration presents a gauntlet of 3 failure vectors: sensory loss, thermodynamic extraction, and biomechanical entrapment. This wireframe model demonstrates the necessity of an unbroken safety line. Strict adherence to protocol is the only method to navigate these geometric hazards. Survival depends entirely on mitigating these hostile physical laws before entry. The countermeasures are non-negotiable: the rule of threes for lighting, continuous guidelines for technical diving, and proper harnesses for vertical access. When mechanical systems fail, panic acts as an accelerant, increasing oxygen depletion and physical exhaustion. Calm, deliberate adherence to systematic protocols is the only reliable defense against the absolute physical laws of the subterranean trap.